Welcome back to What You're Reading Wednesdays. Thanks for tuning in and spending time with us. With the American Library Association, we observe the month of June as Rainbow Book Month, a nationwide celebration of authors and writings that reflect the lives and experiences of the LGBT community. Today, we're highlighting some of our top picks in this genre, a growing genre. What's the first book you remember that featured LGBTQ characters?
Well, I mean, if you want to take Joanne's word for it, technically it's Harry Potter. But honestly, other than that, I can't really remember like one that I didn't know going in had LGBTQ plus characters.
In the 80s, I was just finishing up college and I was taking some literature classes, youth literature and children's literature. And I know that one of the books that we talked about, which I have not read, was called Annie on My Mind by Nancy Gardner. And that was published in 1982. I did not read that one, but I did read several by Chris Crutcher, and several of his books feature a homosexual character. And one that comes to mind was called Stoughton, and it was excellent. It was very good. There's been a few others I have read. I don't know how you classify them because one is called Luna by Julianne Peters, and this is one where the brother cross dresses and stuff. So, and then I just finished This Is How It Always Is by Lori Frankel, which is transgender story of a child. But those were all excellent. I liked all of the ones I read.
I don't know, like Tori and I are in the same generation here where books featuring LGBTQ characters are pretty scarce. The first time I remember actually hearing about one or reading about one in a book was in a Tom Clancy novel, and it was like she was kind of the butt of a joke where she was trying to seduce like a spy's wife, and she ended up accidentally giving out like US nuclear codes or something dumb. But I guess maybe you can count Oscar Wilde's work. Well, it's quasi-autobiographical, but...
So like you guys, I couldn't really, pinpoint a certain book because I feel like I've read a lot of stuff in the past where there's like a minor character,
Yes.
or it's like one sentence and that's it. I think a more recent book was probably Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, where I knew that the main character was gay. It seems like everything since then, I've kind of just sought it out because I've read so many books about straight couples.
Honestly, the first that I remember reading was probably a manga from the early 2000s, back when I was like in middle school. We actually do have the first 6 volumes. It's called Gravitation, and it's basically a genre called boy love, and it's gay romance, but it's written towards like female readers.
I'm a millennial as well, and I feel like it was pretty unheard of back in the day. I didn't seek those books out, and I just don't feel like there were that many of them at the time. There certainly weren't children's books or anything when we were all little kids.
Okay, do you guys remember when that And Tango Makes 3 book came out? People freaked out, and that's like 2005-ish.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, and that's such a sweet story.
Yeah, true story.
Why is it important for libraries to carry these books for all ages?
Oh, well, I could start off by saying it's important to show people that these other people exist. And your kid definitely knows someone who has 2 moms, 2 dads, whatever. It's just a fact of life.
Working in a public library, like we're, supposed to be committed to serving every person in our community, regardless of pretty much anything about them. I didn't know much about, sexual orientation growing up because I didn't have those resources available to me to even learn about it. And it kind of just having that stuff available to anyone, even if you do identify as straight, it's just fostering a more respectful environment overall.
As well as, having these books in our collection for people who don't identify that way to get an insight into these people's lives. It's also important to have it in the collection for people who are questioning or who don't see themselves reflected in media.
It's also just nice to know that you're not alone in something too. So.
And another thing too, because we do have children's books that have these characters in them. And sometimes I know some people are uncomfortable with their children reading books like this. And this is when I say, you need to read the book first. You need to screen it for your child to see if you feel it's good for your child.
Definitely combats the dangers of a single story.
I think we learn the best through stories. And so seeing something from a new perspective really helps.
I think the more open we are about everything, the better it's going to be for the world.
What's on your reading list that's LGBTQ?
I'm not sure if I have something on there right now that is LGBTQ. I'm thinking this book called Shiner, I think this one has something to do with that, but I'm not sure, and it doesn't say anything in the blurb, but I read something about that. Otherwise, right now, no, I don't.
Well, I actually am just finishing up an audiobook called Gender Outlaw by Kate Bornstein. And she was one of the original, I guess, like faces of being trans back in the 80s. And it's just a really interesting memoir. It's an updated version of her book that was first published in like 94-ish. And just kind of showing how the conversation has changed since then, and the conversation, the culture surrounding being trans, and gender as a concept. It was really interesting. One book that I do intend to read is called The Lavender Scare, and this is another nonfiction by David K. Johnson. It's just discussing the moral panic around being gay in the culture of communism in the 50s. So it should be really interesting. You do need to read And the Band Played On by Randy Schultz. It's like, there's just no question. It's a discussion on the AIDS epidemic and what America did or didn't do to help it. It's very worth your time.
So I have quite the stack here. First is Ruby Fruit Jungle. I have to try and get this done by the weekend. But this one, it's fairly old. I believe it was one of the first queer novels that was like winning awards. So yeah, 1973. And then I apologize, the other books I have, they're advanced readers copies, and they were all supposed to have come out by now, but only one of them has, and it's this one. It's called Rick by Alex Gino. He wrote George, which was like won every award when it came out. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Skate Racers. This one again was supposed to have come out by now, but it's pushed to September. This one is about lesbian witches in high school hexing bro dude. So I don't really know that you can go wrong there. It's YA. This one is middle grade. This one is also YA. I Kiss Alice. And again, was supposed to be out by now, but it won't be out until July. And then this one is the last one I have in the role of Brie Hutchins. This one is about an 8th grade girl, so technically middle grade. She's kind of questioning things, questioning her sexuality. So another good one for the kids to read. But again, this one was supposed to have come out by now, but it won't come out until the end of the month.
I was thinking back, and just about every book I've recommended on Whatcha Readin' Wednesday has featured a queer character, or there was a minor character of some kind. So I'm trying to talk about books that I haven't talked about already. I haven't talked about Rainbow Rowell before, but she's one of my favorite authors. And she has 2 books. So I want to do this. The Carry On series. And the second book just came out called Wayward Son. And it's kind of like a Harry Potter-esque wizarding school type series, which is really fun. And then 2 books that I have that I haven't read yet that I look forward to are Picture Us in the Light and Darius the Great is Not Okay. And they are both young adults.
Well, I just finished listening to In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. It's a memoir on queer domestic violence. I thought it was very, very interesting. I've recently discovered that I enjoy listening to memoirs on audiobook, so that might be my new thing. I do recommend that one. And then there's a few, I mean, there's a lot of them. There's a lot that I've been wanting to read, but two that stand out are Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera and I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver.
It's supposed to have come out by now, but it's called Something to Talk About by Meryl
I
Wilson.
can't wait to read that.
Yeah, that one, it was good. It was lesbian fiction, like romance, also own voices. So I think that's the main thing to look for if you're planning to read LGBTQ, basically anything that is written by a minority, make sure that it's own voices. And it's not necessary, but you definitely get more out of it, if you ask me.
A more authentic
Absolutely.
view.
Exactly.
Do you listen to any podcasts, read any magazines, or other forms of media focused on the LGBTQ community?
I don't listen to any podcasts or read any magazines, but like books, when it comes to TV and movies, I almost seek out shows with queer characters. It's a more well-rounded experience.
I do have a podcast that I've just started listening to, and I'm really enjoying. Blue Baby's Pink, and it's B.T. Harmon. He shares his journey of being a gay Christian in the American South.
Oh.
Journal. It's almost like each episode is a chapter of his journal, and each episode is like under 10 minutes. So if you listen to, 2 times the speed, you can get through it really quickly, and there's only 44 episodes total.
I don't know that I listen to any podcasts that like focus on LGBTQ stories. I do listen to 2 that are hosted by queer people. One of them is Getting Curious. It's hosted by Jonathan Van Ness, my favorite Queer Eye guy. I learned of him because he did Game of Thrones, which is just a recap of Game of Thrones, but it was the best thing ever, especially after the last season. And another one that I listened to is called Unhappy Hour, and that one's hosted by Matt Belisai, the Wine About It guy. He's left BuzzFeed and doing his own complaining videos and also complaining on his podcast. But he usually focuses on LGBTQ identifying people as his guests on the podcast, and so.
As librarians, are you seeing more LGBTQ content in media lately? If so, how recently?
Oh, yes. There's a lot in YA or young adult, and I order mostly adult books, and I'm seeing lots more adult fiction that deals with LGBTQ than I have in a long time. So I've been trying to order more of that, so we have more on the shelf. But yes, definitely I've seen more of it.
YA has a lot to offer. I order DVDs, and I always try to include those releases in our collection. And it does seem that there are more films being made featuring queer characters.
Yes. In fact, these sorts of books, this topic, this subject, there are some publishers devoted entirely to it, which is amazing. And some of the larger publishers are finally getting on board. I think memoirs are finally starting to come out.
Especially in YA and lots of graphic novels. They definitely all have stories or characters that are LGBTQ.
Yes, so like you guys said, I ordered the YA fiction for the library, and I definitely try to make sure that there's at least one LGBTQ story, fiction or nonfiction. I guess I order nonfiction sometimes. Sorry, Justine. I always just try to make sure there's one of those in the cart before I send it, because yeah, those stories need to be told. Recently, I read an easy fiction book just because it was about a transgender child. It was easy fiction. It's called When Aidan Became a Brother by Kyle Lukoff. It's about this little boy. His name is Aidan, but he was born a girl, and his mom is pregnant again. And so he's very concerned that this baby's going to come out and his parents are going to get it wrong again, Like they him.
Oh,
So he's trying to do everything that he can to make sure this baby knows that it's, whatever it wants to be, it can be.
That wraps up this episode of What You Reading Wednesdays. Thanks again for joining us. As always, let us know if you have specific topic requests. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. Stay well, stay home, stay curious. Take care. Bye-bye.
They have
I think
opened their world a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. That is scary, Aaron.
Wow.
Sorry, guys, one moment.
As librarians, are you seeing more of... Me too.
Yes, I am.
Back to one, everyone. Back to one.